Jessica Ortner, welcome to the show. How you doing?
Great. Happy to be here.
Thanks for coming out. My favorite episodes, I've said this ad nauseum on the show, but some of my favorite episodes are the ones where I'm just completely out of my element and I don't know anything about tapping. So I'm excited to get into it, to learn about its potential therapeutic uses, how it can augment and support mental health, which is something that many people, unfortunately, today struggle with. But let's dive in straight into the deep end, if you will. What is tapping and how can it be used to improve our subjective experience of this thing that we call life?
Well, I'm excited for you. I'm excited for those listening who don't know, because the moment I learned tapping, it just transformed my life. And it's something that once you learn, you can use anytime. You don't need anything special. You could do it yourself. So basically what tapping is you're using your fingers to tap on acupressure points. These are nerve endings on your body that are very sensitive. And when you tap on these points, it sends this calming signal to your brain. So research is showing that when you tap, you begin to lower cortisol level. There was a great research study at Bond University in Australia that showed after tapping, they lowered cortisol by 42%, with a control group that was just doing like talking about stress relief. Huge implications to what that means, because I love this show and there's so many experts on brain health and on digestion and on heart health. And they always say, lower cortisol, lower your stress. And you listen to that sometimes and you go, yeah, but my life is stressful. I have so much going on. So what tapping does is it sends this calming signal. So when you have a stressful thought, it's not something you're just experiencing in your head. We know it. We feel it in our body. Someone tells you, look at it differently. Don't stress. It'll be fine. And you want to believe it, but you can't, because your body is having a reaction to that stress, because your mind is sending this danger signal. There's that amygdala in your brain. It's saying, danger, be careful, be hypervigilant, look around. Your body feels tense. You try the affirmations, you try the positive thinking, and you just feel like you're lying to yourself. So what tapping does is you actually get clear on the thought that's creating the physical anxiety in your body, and you begin to start tapping on these nerve endings. And what that does is it sends this calming signal. So your brain is saying danger, but your body's getting this message of safety through the tapping. So it creates this pause for your brain to go, wait, I'm getting a safety signal, but I'm stressed about this. Maybe I can recalibrate. How can I look at this? And I've heard again and again from everyone, from teachers stressed at the end of the day to veterans, young veterans coming home, saying that it's the one thing that helps them calm their mind and their body when they feel like they just can't control their thoughts enough. They can't think their way out of their anxiety.
And where does it come from? I mean, is there like an evolutionary explanation for how this might work?
Yeah, well, I always find it interesting. This is my own personal observation, that when we're stressed, we tend to go like this, or we go like this, or we just, put our hands on our chest. These are points that we intuitively know help us feel better. But where it originated was in 1980, there was a psychologist, a therapist named Dr. Roger Callahan. And he at the time was working with a patient, Mary, who had this horrible water phobia. She was scared of showers, kitchen sinks. I mean, the swimming pool and the ocean, just full panic mode. And he'd been working with her using conventional CBT methods for 2 years with like really no difference in the phobia. And she would always share that the phobia started in her stomach. And for those who have phobias or big fears, they tend to say that doesn't start with a thought, it starts with the body. And so she was saying it starts in my stomach. He was studying acupressure points and kinesiology, and he learned that underneath the eye is the stomach meridian. So he thought, well, why don't I combine what I'm doing anyway as a therapist? But let me have her stimulate this point, the stomach meridian. And her water phobia went away. The next day, they went to the ocean. She was able to stand in front of the ocean. She really reclaimed her life. Now, that was one of like the miraculous stories, but it was this miraculous story that started this. He started to map out, depending on what problems, you tap on different points. Then a gentleman came by the name of Gary Craig, who was a student of his. He was a Stanford engineer. And he thought, well, how can we make this more accessible for anyone? And so he mapped out 9 points that are used because they're easily accessible, right? They're on your face, they're on your body, and you can do it yourself. And that started EFT, Emotional Freedom Techniques. So that started a movement. But, it's slow, right, in the beginning because there wasn't the research yet. But the results were coming in. People were saying, I couldn't sleep at night. I'm finally able to sleep. My back pain feels better when I was addressing the stress around this pain. And so a lot of it were just people writing in and saying, it worked for me, it worked for me. Then my brothers and I discovered it. It was a very not incredible story. My brother Nick was at a Tony Robbins event, and Tony is always on the forefront of what's new, what's innovative, how do we help peak performance? And he mentioned this. And so Nick had an experience where he woke up with a neck pain and tapped on his stress and his neck pain went away. He rushed, a few days later, he came to see me. I was really sick with a cold, and it was one of those colds that just would not go away. It was week 2, and I just wasn't getting better. And he was like, listen, I just learned this thing. It's a little strange, but just let's try it and see if it helps with your cold. So I started tapping on these acupressure points while talking about how sick I felt. What tapping does is as it calms your nervous system, you're almost able to access different parts of your brains. A lot of people say they'll start to have aha moments and clarity. And I remember just my head was down and I looked at him and I go, I don't want to get better. He goes, what do you mean? And I go, I feel so lost. I feel so frustrated. And being sick is the only way that I can take a break without feeling like I'm drowning in guilt. And so then I switched and I started tapping on things aren't working for me. I'm so frustrated. I feel so stuck. And I had this huge shift, and it was the first time. I've always read self-help books, and I've loved, my mom's a therapist, my dad's an engineer, I've always loved those things. But I always had anxiety so much in my body that it was really hard for me to think my way out of a panic or out of the stress. And that moment for me was this relief in my chest. It's almost like when you're carrying a really heavy backpack and you take it off, and it's almost like you suddenly realize how heavy it was. And like anything, I forgot about it because that's what we do. We learn something profound and then we go on with our lives. And then I was going through a breakup and I didn't remember all the points. And I remember I was back living at my parents' house. I was maybe 21 and I didn't want them to hear me crying. So I was like, what is that thing that Nick told me? And I started tapping on the points. And again, I felt this relief. And then Nick came and was like, listen, we got to do something about this. So many people need to know how that this works. And what we're seeing is the results because people are writing in, therapists are using it into their practice, but it's still not out there. And so we decided to make a documentary film about it.
Wow.
We had no money. We had no film experience. We ordered equipment that showed up in my brother's little apartment. Luckily, YouTube existed, so we were figuring out how to do lights. He asked his best friend from high school, Nick Palizzi, to join. And then we went on this quest to document people before and after and also get different experts. So that started it. Then we started doing different things online, teaching other people. And that was 18 years ago that we started. So it's been almost 19 now. So it's been 2 decades of doing this. And we're in the most exciting time of any of it. Now.
It's incredible, yeah, and it's since exploded. But I mean, what do you say to cynics or skeptics that are well, the placebo effect in psychology is very, it can be prominent, and that this is just new age woo.
Yeah.
What do you say to those people?
The results speak for themselves. So we also came out with an app it was 7 years ago, and we've had 36 million plays of tapping meditations. When you tap, you do a scale before and after, 0 to 10, how do you feel, just to see if it's working. So if you're tapping on your anxiety, you'll say, how anxious do I feel, 0 to 10. You'll tap a bit, and then you'll check in again. Well, what that created is, for us, we have 18 million data points now of people's before and after. And we're seeing that 9 minutes of tapping on releasing anxiety, tapping meditation, it improves by 42% in under 9 minutes. There's also studies coming out. So there was that study around cortisol that showed it drops cortisol. There's been a brain study, a brain scan study. This was with women who are struggling with cravings, and they put them in an MRI machine, and they showed them these photos of cravings, and you see their brain, it like lights up like fireworks. They're just, that just looking at a photo, you can build that craving. And then they left and they did 4 weeks of tapping. And not only did they say that their cravings went down, but when they went back into the MRI machine, they could look at that image and their brain wasn't firing off the same. It showed the brain that it was impacting how our brain responds to a stimulus. So, there's been so much research that it's been approved by the VA. So veterans are using it. And it's just the beginning. I mean, really, I think we've just gone to this critical mass where there's so many people talking about it and the results are so good that now more universities and researchers are turning their heads when they weren't 10 years ago. And so even right now, I know of many of the things I can't talk about until they're out, but I know a lot of major universities are looking at our app, at the data, and starting to do their own studies. So it's exciting. And I have to shout out therapists, because I think this has grown so many times. People say, my therapist told me to do this between sessions. So there's a lot of therapists that have been recommending it. So it's not as new agey as we may think, because it is used in a very clinical setting often.
It's so cool. Well, I mean, the other thing that I think it's important to remind, cynics about is that at some point, surely mindfulness practices, meditation was considered new age and woo. And now, I mean, there are thousands of papers on the benefits across myriad different, conditions and looking at various outcomes, showing how meditation, mindfulness training, walks in nature, like all that stuff have physiologic effects.
Yes. And they all play a part. So therapy is very important, but for most people who have the money and the resources to do therapy, it's once a week, right? Meditation is really wonderful. It really helps with resiliency, but you have to be in a good state. It's something that you have to practice. Both those things are amazing. This is where tapping comes into play. It's 3:00 in the morning. You just woke up and you're panicked. You had a bad dream. You're thinking about something, or you can't fall asleep. Something happened and you are revved up. And in that moment, it's really hard to meditate, to be talked down from it. So to be able to have a tool that you could use. So for example, in the early days, this was one of the first stories that I remember. We got this email because we found a lot of young veterans were using tapping. And there was this one gentleman who wrote to us, and he said he had just got back. So this was 18 years ago. He had just got back from Iraq. And he went into a Walmart. He was dressed as a civilian, and seeing everybody, it triggered him. And so he's standing there, and suddenly his body is having a reaction. He's in full panic. And in that moment, he's not going to meditate. He can't reach out to his therapist. So in that moment, he just began to look around and tap on those acupressure points. And he could feel his energy start to feel more grounded. And he shared that there was another gentleman in uniform who passed him and put his hand on his shoulder and goes, "Brother, keep tapping, it works."
Wow.
And walked out. And so he wrote to us to let us know. So that's the perfect example. In those moments, you can't reach for meditation, you can't reach for therapists, but you can reach for something that you can have in the moment when you're triggered. So it's wonderful for parents to know. I have a 7 and a 4-year-old, and I use it all the time for them. And, even just like coming here, LA traffic, just being in the back. Okay, I'm going to do a podcast. I love this show. I hope I do a good job. All right, let me tap. And it just really grounds your energy. And I find that it just mentally helps you come back online.
That's so cool. Yeah, I mean, and even if it's a placebo, like it's a placebo, like if it works, it works, and it's safe.
Yes.
It's free. You could do it, of your own accord. But also, I mean, think about when the doctor, taps your knee in that special place that causes the reflex, right, of your leg to kick up. Like, it does not, to me, it would stand to reason that there are ways that you can tap yourself that might not necessarily elicit a visible reflex, like the way, like, your, knee might kick up, but a reflex that's more psychological.
Yes.
And so that's where
what's interesting about tapping is you don't start with the positive thinking. So Because the challenge is when you're activated and you're feeling stressed, if you try to say something positive, it's like it doesn't have a place to land, because your nervous system does not care that you have a positive outlook in life. Your nervous system does not care about you reaching your goals or fulfilling all of your dreams. Your nervous system just wants to keep you safe. And so when you're having that stress reaction, it's because your nervous system is perceiving something to be a threat. And so what you need to do is not fix yourself or talk yourself out of it, but to give yourself reassurance and safety. So the nervous system needs some reassurance that you are not being chased by tigers, that it was an email from a boss, that you are safe. And so by focusing and having that trigger and tapping on those points, it sends that calming signal and your whole body begins to relax. If it was simply placebo, you would have to think positive. But in this case, you're actually allowing yourself to be aware of the experience as you tap on these points. And so that's what I feel is really wonderful. And then you'll see that I'll do positive tapping. You know, I do a lot of, on my Instagram, I'll do something and it might go positive quickly, because if you're already feeling good, it's sending a signal of safety. So that aligns. But if you're have this threat and this worried thought, and now you have this counteractive signal, you have a signal of safety, that's what creates the interrupt. And that's what really the book is all about, because it's called Rewired. Because it's about looking at the patterns we have in our lives, the moments we get triggered, the moments we get stuck, the moment we do the thing we said we wouldn't do, and we find ourselves doing that very same thing. It's because for our nervous system, it is safer to do what's familiar than to do something different. And so, for example, if you have every intention to change your diet and you want to eat better, well, food is often a comfort. It really does calm us. It grounds us. And so if you're suddenly deciding to eat better, but now you have stress, but the one way that you dealt with stress before was through food, now you're taking that away with a diet. There's only a certain amount of time you can go before you sabotage yourself. Because the sabotage is really this misguided self-love. Your body is like, is this safe? Because I don't feel grounded. I'm going to go back to what feels safe and familiar. And so here with Rewired, what we're doing is we're looking at those moments and going, how can we give ourselves that moment of safety so it feels safe to expand, to try, to eat better, to take care of ourselves, and not go back to those familiar patterns, which our brain looks at as safe because we've done it all our lives.
Yeah, I mean, if you're trying to white knuckle through behavior change without addressing the underlying stimulus, whether it's stress, overwhelm, you're fighting an uphill battle that is ultimately going to be, doomed. I mean, without addressing the underlying stimulus that's driving those behaviors.
It's so important to mention because in my past, I really thought that I could hate myself happy, and I thought that I could criticize myself thinner, and I could shame my situation enough that I would make more money. There was a part of me in the past that I thought it actually made me a self-aware person to be hard on myself, that if I was too positive or made things too easy, then it didn't mean enough. And what I really realized with tapping is that real change begins with the signal of safety, through self-care, through self-love, and all of that. It always goes down to, are you feeling safe in that moment? So what I like about it too is when I understood this, I found that I was so much less judgmental, because when I would get in my own way, the judgments would stop of you just don't have enough willpower, you're just not as good as everybody else, you're just not good enough. And when I realized that when I have those moments, it's my nervous system seeking safety. It's seeking to be smaller. It's trying to be safe. Then you can look at it and go, all right, well, how do I better support myself and not look at myself as broken, but look at myself as all I need is some love and some reassurance.
Wow. Powerful story. How do you determine which Acupoints to tap?
So the great thing is it's 9 points. And so this is something that Gary Craig mapped out with the EFT sequence. And so all the studies have been done on those 9 points. There's other points in the body. There's a 9 gamut point here. But the nice thing about these 9 points, and I can teach you them, is that once you know them, you're always using the same 9 points, and they're really easy to access. So that's the main point is that they're acupressure points that are easy to access and remember.
Are these the same points that in the setting of acupuncture, you're getting poked?
Yes, but if with acupuncture, it also depends on like what you are addressing, but they are the same. It's the same meridian system.
What's a meridian?
Yeah. So a meridian is an energy center, but what we're realizing with tapping is that these have these nerve endings. So when your nervous system, people always throw nervous system out and like, well, what are we really talking about? And we're talking about the brain, the spinal cord, and nerve endings. And so it's constantly, we're realizing that we're not like living in a brain where we have like puppeteers, where it's like our brain is controlling everything. Our body also feels emotions and can carry memories and has its own experience. So it's this information highway back and forth. And so these points with these nerve endings, which are aligned with meridian points, are found to create this calming effect. And I think that's why sometimes, again, like I mentioned before, we intuitively, touch these points when we're feeling stressed.
So you keep pointing to the space underneath your eyes.
That's my favorite one. So the points are the side of the hand.
Okay.
And it doesn't matter what side of the body you tap on. You can also tap on both sides or just one side. The next one is where the eyebrow begins. So, when people are stressed, they go like this. They put their hand right on the bridge of their nose.
Yeah.
Then we have, if you follow your eyebrow, the side of the eye right on the bone. Then you have underneath the eye, underneath the nose, underneath the lip, which is the crease between the lip and the chin. Then you have the collarbone point. If you feel the U-shaped bone underneath your neck and you go down an inch and over an inch on either side, you'll feel it. Perfect. Then you have underneath the arm. It's about a hand width from your armpit.
Like your lats?
Yeah, like where your, I usually say where your bra strap lies, but you don't know where that is. But it's about a hand width.
Not wearing one today.
Yes. and then we have the very top of the head. That's like the last point. So when you're tapping, you're really kind of going through this cycle. So if you learn, so for example, we have our tapping solution app, which I mentioned has, over 30 million tapping meditation played, and you can choose different things. So you can choose anxiety, you can choose cravings, but what I really like about it is that once you get familiar with the points, you can use it yourself. You're not dependent on an app or even a book. It is really something that I've had so many people say, I found myself in this dark moment. It was the middle of the night, and I remembered that tapping, and I turned to it. Or I got into a car accident, and I had to tell the police officer what happened, but my voice was shaking so much I couldn't speak that I was able to tap for 2 rounds, and then I was able to tell them what happened. So those are the kind of stories that we hear. There's one story that really stands out. There was this woman, Sam, who was a 911 caller. She was answerer. And she was always known as like the calm one. Like Sam was the one who could everything was going bad, and she could just be the calm voice on the other end of the line helping people. And even in her family, she was always like the strong and the calm one. She retired from that job, and she realized that once she retired, it was like all of the stories, all the calls that she picked up started coming back. And she was reliving them at night. So every time she wanted to go to bed, she couldn't help but think about another story, another parent calling, crying, another accident. And so she was trying so many different things. She was trying to medicate to try to fall asleep. And she found our app, and we have this quick 3 minutes micro boost of safety. So it's like 3 minutes just focusing on letting your body know it's safe. And first time she did it, she goes, I was able to fall asleep. It was unbelievable. So she did it every single night. She couldn't fall asleep without it. Micro boost, 3 minutes. Every single night until a month later, she wakes up one morning and goes, oh, I didn't do that tapping last night. Oh my goodness. And then realized she doesn't have to tap every night. And so she did have to be consistent with it. But then she gave her brain that message every single night that she was safe with the tapping, that then after that, she didn't need to use it to fall asleep anymore.
Is there a specific place to tap for insomnia?
No, this is what I'm saying. It's always the same points. That's what's so amazing about it.
All 9 of them.
It's all 9 of them, and the only thing you're changing is what you're focusing on. So if you're focusing on insomnia, well, what's the story that you tell yourself? I worked with this woman once who had breast cancer, and insomnia is very common for those going through cancer. And the insomnia had gotten so bad that the moment the sun would start going down, the anxious thoughts would start going up. I mean, just the moment, it was like 4:00 and she just already felt so stressed thinking, is this going to happen again? And so her body's going into this fight or flight response thinking like, what's in store for me? I am not safe. And so when we did the tapping, what we focused on is the fear. I'm not safe. What if it's another bad night? What if happens again? What if I can't sleep? All the things I have to do tomorrow. And so she allowed herself to give herself this voice while she's tapping. And we got to the point where we were able to say, even if I have a bad night, I'm safe. Because that's what the body needs to hear. No one can guarantee the future. But what if you could feel safe? You're going to be okay if it's a good night. You're going to be okay if it's a bad night. You're allowed to just rest. And the goal is simply to rest. And with that, she began to fall asleep. Sometimes the pressure to fall asleep also contributes to the stress because we play the story in our mind of what we have to do tomorrow and how we struggled in the past. And so what we did was just focus and get to the place where we could say, even if I don't have a good night's sleep, I'm going to be okay. And that is what really helped her fall asleep.
You know, it reminds me of an experience that we recently had on the podcast where my friend Eric Goodman came into the show, who is he's like a physiology expert, chiropractor, but he became notable when he came up with foundation training, which has gone viral, and he's got, millions of fans all around the world, helping people with better posture and fix their back pain and all kinds of stuff. And we're friends offline, and his work has really helped me with my back pain journey over the years. And I was super excited to sit across from him and talk to him all about foundation training. But he had this physical stress response, this physical fight or flight response, where he was literally unable to carry on with the interview because he just started sweating profusely, like buckets. Like his body was having a stress response, even though he mentally knew that he was totally safe. He was in good hands. Yeah, he was going to be sitting across from a friend, somebody who's totally like a fan of everything that he was going to talk about. So it's interesting because like that was a moment for me where I saw very plainly that though the mind and the body, like usually they're in synchrony. Like if you know that you're safe, the body typically responds to that positively, but they're not always coupled in the sense that like you might know that you're safe, but your body might be telling itself a different story altogether, which was the case with Eric. And he ultimately we couldn't go on with the interview. He had to leave. He called up a physician friend. He got a beta blocker prescribed. And then the next day we were able to do it. But it's super interesting. I wonder if he had tapping available to him, if that would have changed the outcome.
Yeah. I've heard so many times where people come across someone having that reaction. A big one is plane rides, fear of flying. You decide I'm going to book that trip, and you get to the airport, and all of a sudden your body physically cannot get on that airplane, and you start to have a similar reaction. So you start to sweat and you have heart palpitations, and you start to think, well, there's something physically wrong with me. I can't get on it. And then you think a 6-hour plane ride. And it's happened multiple times. We have a fear of flying tapping meditations, and multiple times there's someone wrote in who just saw someone on the floor like that and was like, I have an app. I know this is crazy, but do you want to just try this? And was able to lower her anxiety enough that she was able to get on the airplane with her family. And I see it all the time. And I think it's important to know that you can have all the best intentions and you can know better. You could know, like, I'm in safe hands. It's totally fine. The probability of the plane crashing is a lot less than the probability of a crashing in the car on the way here. Like we can logically have these conversations with ourselves and write lists of why we wouldn't be scared. But our body does not care. Our body is just having that response. And so sometimes too, the body learned that response as a child. So if you have a fear of public speaking, which by the way, all of us we're wired to fear it a little bit because our being part of a tribe is part of survival. And so fitting in and being liked is survival. And so that's why rejection can physically feel so awful. That's why being on a podcast or speaking on stage can create this stress response, because there is a part of you that's wired to say, I need to be liked because I can't be cast out because I will die in the woods by myself. And so we logically know that's not going to happen. I could do a horrible job here. I'm still going to be fine. But my body is having that reaction. And so having a tool to be able to let your body know, hey, you're safe to do this. You're even safe to make a mistake. You're safe. And so that is what we're doing here and what's so powerful. And so, yeah, your body speaks to you. Oh, so what I was saying with these moments of the past, if you were a kid, and this happens so much, do you remember? I mean, I remember a time when they would be a spelling bee and you'd have to stand up in front of the class. For me, it was just the absolute worst. And when I was in second grade, I couldn't read and I had a speech impediment and I had to stay back. And so suddenly I had all of these classmates asking, what happened? Where did you go? And my response was, in my head, I'm dumb. Because as a kid, I couldn't read. So like that just must mean that I'm dumb. So even when I learned how to read and I became a really good writer and I love words and I love writing, it always felt like I was tricking everybody else. Like the belief was there, I'm dumb. And so even if I'm getting good grades now, it was like I'm fooling everybody. I'm working extra hard so people don't know this belief that I created as a child. And so these mechanisms are for survival. So that was one of my wounds. And so now you might overcompensate where you have to be extra successful or always have to be proving your achievements because you're trying to make up for this belief that you created as a kid, and your body remembers that. So you have this stress of like, I have to be liked and I have to do well and I have to do good grades. And that's what I had. I had a lot of anxiety as a young kid from staying back in second grade. And that anxiety carried me through my 20s. And it wasn't until I started doing tapping that I was able to link it to this childhood experience where I had to look at that. I had to tap and even think about that child and send that signal of safety, of saying, you're not dumb, you're okay, you don't know how to read, like you're fine. But we make things into something. And so then in the future, we start to have that stress response. So what's interesting is the way we look at memories, the way scientists look at memories have changed. We used to think that a memory was a memory, like it's stone. It is what happens. It's the truth of what happened. And what we're realizing is something called memory reconsolidation, that when you look back at your past and you have a memory, it's like opening this file on your computer. And in that moment, we know we open the file because you can be thinking of something that happened in second grade, and that stress will feel as strong as it does as if you were right there in that classroom, right? Just thinking about it. And usually we think about a past with a stressful experience, we open up that file, and then we close the file, and we keep going. What we're doing with tapping is we're opening up that file and we're looking at that moment, but now we're sending a signal of safety. Now we're using the body to have that thought, but send that safety. And so what we hear again and again is people tapping on something in the past and they'll go, what happened didn't change. None of the facts changed. But what changed is the way I, right now as an adult, can relate to that experience. The charge has gone because that memory was giving me a signal of fear of not being safe. And now you're giving it the signal of you survived that, you are safe. And when your body can feel safe, you can have the memory, but it's not hijacking you when it's time for you to speak in a meeting or do something. You're not going back to that second grader who could not spell in the spelling bee.
You're basically like reprogramming the response.
Yes, exactly.
What's the relationship between tapping and EMDR? Because it kind of reminds me, I was seeing a therapist for a while, and one of her expertises was in EMDR. So I did it a handful of times, and I know that there are a lot of proponents of it, and there's a lot of science there. I personally didn't feel anything from it, but the way that it works, that it's been proposed to work, this kind of, reminds me somewhat of that.
Yes. So I will admit that my brother called me and goes, everybody keeps asking us about EMDR. We should look this up. And I did not. I've never had an experience. So I don't know how it relates to that. I've heard that they do use some tapping points, but I've never had a personal experience with it. So I can't speak on it.
Well, it's primarily, it's bilateral stimulation. But the mechanism, it sounds similar. Like I don't actually know this to be true, but it sounds like it's allowing you to sort of reopen that folder and reprocess some of those long dormant memories that might have had ripple effects that have created responses that you carry with you into adulthood.
Yes. Yeah, it's very similar. And that's why there's clinical EFT, which is therapists, people trained who do that work with someone else. And then there is the regular, what we do in our app, which is just in those moments. How do you calm yourself in those moments when you feel triggered? Sometimes you have to go back to that moment, but sometimes you don't. Like, I was speaking to this man, his name is Gary. He is a veteran. He was in the Navy. He's retired now. He's probably 75. And he has had this horrible back pain. He, 10 years before, had just gone to pick up a box, and it just, like, something tweaked, and he tried everything. He was going through he went to the chiropractor. He started doing a new therapy where he was explaining to me they burn your nerve endings so that you don't feel the pain as much. It lasted for 6 months. But then the pain came back. And so his wife had found us online. And it's always the wives. I got to, like, give it credit. Sometimes it's the women who are more open to trying something different. And she said, can you just try this tapping thing? And the very first time he tried tapping, not even focused on his back, but focused on his anxiety, his pain went down. So it went down by almost half. And then after that, he started tapping every single day, and the pain has not come back. And he was telling me this with tears in his eyes. And I said to him, Gary, what was the breakthrough? Did you make a connection to your childhood? And he's like, no, I still to this day don't know what it was. I believe, and we still need to research and figure out why this is happening, but I believe that your mind can make those connections even if it's not conscious. That even though he might not be able to say exactly what it was, by focusing on the emotions he had around the back pain, which, think about stress, it tenses you up. I think we are underestimating how emotions are contributing to our own pain. And so he told me that he goes, yeah, and then I called my buddy, he called him his Navy brother, who had a bullet wound in his back. He was in a hunting accident, and he has it lodged there. And so he has trouble sleeping. And so he told his, like, Navy buddy or brother, he called him, about tapping, and he did the tapping and was able to fall asleep. He still has some back pain from the wound, but what he was saying is that it just softens it enough that he's able to go to sleep. So I hear that a lot, that either people do have, like, miraculous things, or they go from an 8 from a fear of flying to a 4. Now you can get on the plane, right? Like, now you'll get to Italy, but you'll able to lower it in just a few minutes.
Xanax is the only thing that works for me for long flights.
So far. Yeah.
I don't take very many pharmaceuticals, but for very long, like, transatlantic flights and the like, I literally, like, I just can't do it without. It's just so much better for me to have some kind of
so what happens?
pharmaceutical intervention.
Does the nervousness start when you get there? Does it start, like, before the trip happens? What's your experience going up to it?
It's, you know what? It's not necessarily nerves about the flight itself. Like, I'm not nervous about flying. I'm just the anxiety of having my body stuffed into a seat for so many hours on end.
Right.
Like, am I going to get a blood clot in my calves? Am I going to, like, the discomfort, it just creates this rumination for me that, like, makes the whole experience incredibly uncomfortable. And I certainly can't sleep without some kind of way to turn that off.
Well, you said this key word, which is rumination. And this is where this technique shines, because you're up at night and you're thinking about something over and over again. And what happens is it's hard to let it go because you're searching for safety. You're thinking about the worst case scenario because you're trying to prevent it. The challenge is you can't think your way out of overthinking. You can't think your way out of rumination. And the reason is it's like a survival mechanism. Like, I have to keep thinking about this because this feels like a threat to my body. And so that is when tapping really shines, when you're able to just tap on these points and say, like, play it in your head over and over again. And what will happen is as you continue to tap, you might think the thought, but the intensity starts going down. And when the intensity is lower, it's easier to think a different thought. If you have a high intensity, it's like, forget it. You're just going to keep going over and over again. But when you lower it, it gives you that pause to be able to let something else in.
So you've talked about the 9, what are they, Acupoints?
Yeah.
Is there a specific, when it comes to the methodology, is there a specific sequence in which you want to hit them? What's the duration?
Yeah.
Is there a certain number of taps?
Yeah, it's a great question. whatever is working. Before I shared that this woman, Sam, the 911 responder, she did 3 minutes a night. That's all she needed to feel safe.
3 minutes in totality or 3 minutes per Acupoint?
No, total.
Huh.
It's like she was just going around very quickly just for 3 minutes. I think it was maybe just two rounds in total. And that was able to calm her body enough to help her fall asleep. We have things called quick taps, which are like, they could be 90 seconds to a 15-minute experience, a 20-minute experience. If you're working with a therapist who uses tapping, then it's usually like the same hour. It really depends on what you're working on in your own experience. So for her, Sam, she had to do it every day before it went away. I had another woman who had this horrible fear of driving. Well, because both her parents died in a car accident. So you could just imagine. And she had kids. And when you can't drive and you have 2 young kids, your life just gets smaller and smaller because you're so limited to what you could do. And she was so determined to just get back out there. And so she started we have like a whole series for fear of driving. So she just did that, and she just played that for, I think, a week or 2, and that lowered her anxiety enough to be able to get in the car again and just opened up her life. So sometimes you find, this is why I really like the 0 to 10 scale, is because you can see like, oh, this time I did 9 minutes and I dropped from an 8 to a 6. Okay, well, let me try that again next time. And you can begin to see your own progress. Most of the time, apps, what they're tracking is you showing up. So they're like, yay, you did 5 days in a row. What we're tracking is your results. So like, how far did that scale go towards helping you feel better?
And where would you say the scientific evidence is the strongest? Is it PTSD, anxiety, or something else?
That's a really good question with the research. I think the cortisol study is very strong because it's a replica study. It was done before, and then it was done again at Bond University in Australia. But I will say what I think has been the reason that people are talking, why it's spreading so much, is PTSD and pain relief are the 2 things. Because when you're in pain and now your pain has gone lower because you dealt with the stress, you tell everybody. It absolutely changes your life. So we have found that we hear a lot of stories for those 2. But with research, I would say just the cortisol is the strongest thing that we have to share.
And pain is major. I mean, there are not many there are non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, but you don't want to like take those chronically. They're great to have, but chronic use of them is associated with cardiovascular events. And I mean, God knows we're in the middle of an opioid epidemic.
Yeah.
And so to be able to have something like this at your disposal, to at least try, it gives me reason for optimism.
I think the thing that's working against us is that it works for so many things, because I think that's where the criticism is like, I don't get it. You have someone who's doing it for their stress around, we have like a whole IVF series. So you're doing about the stress for IVF, but now you're doing back pain. Like none of those 2 are not related. How is it working for so many things? Because it lowers your cortisol, and your stress impacts every aspect of your life. It impacts your fertility, impacts your brain health, it impacts your pain. And so it's just, all we're doing is focusing on the stress and giving your body that safety signal. And then your body can begin to do what it's meant to do. It's the body that's healing, not the tapping. Tapping is not going to heal you. Tapping is going to help lower your stress enough that your body can do what it's designed to do, which is function properly and help you heal.
And how long in your experience does one have to do it for before they start seeing benefits?
1 session, you'll feel better. You'll feel, relief just tapping on anxiety. And then sometimes it's you're doing it like every day because you're working on something big. Other times it's like that SOS moment where you feel yourself panicking and you move to something. So it really is just a tool, and you can kind of navigate what feels right to you. I do think consistency is great. So we have challenges where you tap every day to help yourself like stay on track to see. Because if you're like me, I did it once and I forgot about it until I had another huge emergency in my life and I used it again. That happens. So it's nice to have like some consistency. And now what I realize is the way I look at my stress is that because I'm now more consistent, it's like a glass of water. And before, the glass of water was just always to the top. So if something would happen, it would be like a little drip and it would just pour over. I would so easily feel overwhelmed. But when you begin to be more consistent and you're able to lower that water level, yeah, something happens that's stressful. You do something in your day that's stressful, but it doesn't make you feel completely overwhelmed because you just have more space to handle what comes at you.
Yeah, it's called allostatic load. It's
Ooh,
like,
I didn't know that
yeah,
word.
you've got a finite capacity for stress before allostatic load suddenly becomes allostatic overload, and that leaves you vulnerable to, infection, like immune suppression, burnout. But like a little bit of stress is good. Like
Yeah,
stress is not bad. It's not
totally.
universally bad. I mean, we go to the gym because it's a stress in our bodies, but just enough stress to cause us to adapt and to get stronger. But it's like if you're doing high intensity, super intense, exercise on top of like, you're following some influencer who's promoting fasting. So you decide to try that. And then on top of that, you've got your kids screaming in the back seat. And on top of that, you missed your work deadline. On top of that, it's snowing outside. So it's just like stress compounding on stress, compounding on stress. Suddenly your glass is full. And that's, that
And then
becomes a
you'll
problem.
get the migraines and you'll get the back pain and like your body will respond to that stress. It impacts everything.
It's so true. So if somebody only has 60 seconds to give to tapping, I mean, what is the biggest, highest ROI way to implement this therapy?
I'd say give yourself 2 minutes, do one round where you just focus on how you're feeling. And if you're starting to feel better, you can begin, and we can have an experience. We can begin to move towards something better. The way that I look at it is you want to weed before you plant. So we don't want to just go way positive and just go, I got this, because there's no place for that to land. The stress is too high. But when the stress lowers, now suddenly you go to those resources, the things that you've learned from podcasts, a way of reframing, and now you can kind of say those things to yourself and they can land. And so what I would say is, you just tap on the side of the hand, and the way you start is you always start with saying, even though, and you state how you feel. So this is where Roger Callahan's like therapy comes in. So we're realizing that pushing through it does not work. It does not work in therapy. Like pushing through an emotion does not work. Ignoring an emotion doesn't work. Your nervous system needs to know, like, I see this threat. I'm aware of it. I'm not ignoring it. So what you say is, even though I feel overwhelmed, and then you can say, I accept how I feel. Or you can say, I give my body permission to relax. You give yourself this statement of just saying, even though I feel this, I'm okay, or I accept myself. And you start that on the side of the hand.
Do you have to say it out loud, or can that be done
You can
internally?
do it within your own mind. Yeah,
Okay.
within your own mind. Tony Robbins, who wrote the foreword, is adamant that it's more powerful saying it out loud, but there is something, it uses more senses to say it out loud, but you got to do what feels most comfortable to you. So you can say it within your own mind, in your head. And then you can tap on the point, so I'd be eyebrow, and just say, like, this overwhelmed. I'm so stressed. I have so much going on in my life. So now I'm tapping underneath my mouth. And if you don't know what to say, you could just say this stress, under the mouth, this overwhelm, collarbone, this stress, under the arm, this overwhelm, top of the head, this stress. Keep doing that as like allowing yourself to be aware of how you're feeling while you tap, and you'll start to notice that you can say those things without feeling so charged. The first time you do it, it is a little like, when you're trying to like pat your head and rub your stomach, like there is a part of it that you're like, am I doing this right? So if you follow along, we have free tapping meditations. You could find them on YouTube, tappingsolution.com. You can just go and have an experience. And the first time, a lot of people say they have results, but it's also normal to be like, what point is that again, as you're learning? But when you do it a few times, then you'll find it so much easier to incorporate, because now you know the 9 points. So you can just be in the car, you're in the taxi in the back, you're waiting to pick up your kid from school in a car, those little moments that you can bring in the tapping.
Does it become more effective if you get somebody to do it for you? Like, what if you have a significant other learn the 9 points and have them do it? Like the same way that, you can kind of massage yourself if you've got like a sore elbow or something, but it always feels better to have someone do it for you.
I think it's important to do it. It's helpful to have someone, for sure. It's helpful to have a guide. I think the reason that we're seeing so many veterans who are using this technique is that they'll sit in front of a therapist who might be so incredibly great at what they do, have all the certifications, but they did not live what they lived, and they don't understand what they understand. And so when you're able to be with your own thoughts and feel like you're allowing yourself to be where you are and tap on the points. I think there's something really healing about it. There are therapists who use tapping and can guide you through that. But I just hear it again and again that like there's something so intimate about being able to either listen to a tapping meditation and reflect on your own experience without having to share it, that just makes people use it more than being dependent on seeing somebody once a week or asking somebody else to do it. I feel like it's a very honest, safe space when you're doing it by yourself. Wow. That's not to say working with someone else isn't phenomenal. It is. It's just not always available either.
Now, physically, do you need to be in a safe space in order for it to work? Or can it be done like on the subway, on your commute to work, while you're sitting in traffic?
Yeah, you can do it. I mean, you can do it sitting in traffic. You can do it really any place that you want. But I was just, the other day I take a pottery. I just started pottery Monday nights. My neighbor does it. So I walk over to her house. I'm with all of these grandmothers. It's the best. And so I'm like working on this pottery, and I usually walk with a neighbor, and this time I didn't. And I was walking back and it was dark, like so dark. I think it was like a new moon, like no moon. I live in the woods. And I was so scared. And I had a moment that I was like, do I tap? And I was like, no, I'm just going to run home. And I just ran home. And then and I think that's the perfect example, is that when you're kind of like, I don't feel safe here, I'm just going to run home. And then there's other moments where you're like, actually, I am safe on the subway. I am safe in the back of the car. Like, we can distinguish those moments. And I think the more that you do the tapping, the more you begin to be able to calibrate to your situation, to even let your nervous system know, to train it. Like, I am safe on an airplane. I am safe in the car. And that's when you begin to use it. But like, I wouldn't like do it to not feel fear if, I'll just run home.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Is there any use case for parents? I mean, like, I'm not a parent, but my little brother has 3 babies, so I've got 3 nieces, and they're monsters. They're all like, one of them is like just constantly screaming, and so I wonder if like there's a utility for parents to like tap on their babies.
Yeah, there is, and a
Acupoints.
lot of parents love it. But the first piece of advice, which parents hate to hear, but it's always start with yourself, because your kids borrow your calm. Your kids borrow your calm. If you're calm, it really impacts them. And I hear it again and again, especially when we're feeling stressed about our kids. Like, our kids are stressed. Now, we as a parent really want to fix it, because nothing's more painful than seeing your own kids suffer. But if we aren't dealing with our anxiety about the situation, we're bringing that anxiety to them. So just start tapping on yourself. Also, your kids will see you tapping, so they'll become more familiar with it. And then tapping with kids is wonderful. My mother, for 25 years, was an elementary school psychologist. And when she learned tapping, she started using it. And what she explained was, a lot of times little kids, they can't articulate what they're feeling. They don't even know what they're feeling. They're just feeling a feeling.
Big emotions.
And so just big emotions. And so being able to just even simply teaching them the collarbone point, even just having them tap on a point while they tell you what happened, parents are saying that their child is able to articulate even what they feel better. They're feeling calmer. Even if they can't, they can just tap on these points and they start to feel more relaxed. My kids, I have in the app, we have like this card deck where kids will pick a card and it'll have a message and then they can tap on it. And so my kids will pick a card at night and then they'll just like lie on the bed and then they'll be like, tap on me. But in the beginning, they were very resistant. They didn't want to tap, which I thought was so ironic that like my whole family is into tapping. And then my kids were like, oh no, I don't like that. So I was like, how do I get them to tap? And what I realized was, if I pick a card and I tap and I feel better, then they go, my turn. And so that's what I started doing. So I always start and then they'll go, okay, my turn. And they'll pick a card and then I'll just tap with them before bed, and it just calms them.
And what do you say to listeners who are just like, it sounds great, but like, yeah, we've heard this before about crystals, depending on what pockets of Instagram.
Well, I don't think crystals haven't had cortisol studies. Crystals haven't had brain scan studies. Crystals haven't had, PTSD. There have been studies with PTSD using tapping. So there's been 300 published studies. About 100 of them were with a control group. It is growing bigger and bigger. And I think it's just one of those things where it's just so big you can't ignore it. And you don't have to believe it works. And obviously, if it's not your cup of tea, it's not your cup of tea. But I am an overthinker. I can't just meditate. Like, I would wish that I could meditate, but it just never called to me because I just would feel stuck in anxiety. And this was just the one thing that I could just easily go to. So it doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to be fancy. Learn the basics and just experiment. Try a few different tapping meditations and just have an experience for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, these therapies, they only work when practiced. Like, they don't,
Yes.
you know, they have to leave the page in order for them to have any effect whatsoever. And so I love that, you know, like, I'm not a meditator either. So the fact that this is something that, first of all, it's way more time efficient, it sounds like. Is there, because my audience, you know, loves to get into the weeds in terms of, you know, PubMed studies and things like that. Is there is tapping referred to tapping in the scientific literature, or is there a more medical jargon name for people to check
clinical
out?
EFT. There's been different studies. So one is clinical EFT, which has been like validated as a certain way of doing it. And so it's usually a therapist who's using the points. So there's clinical EFT studies. And then our app is, I would say, for lack of better words, regular EFT, consumer EFT. And that is where a lot of the studies are like, watch this space. Because now that we have the data points, now that we have the 0 to 10 scale, that is a lot of big universities. I think I can mention Yale and Harvard are interested, and they're looking at this closely to begin to study it because they can see it. It's hard to manipulate 18 million data points.
Wow. And you kind of alluded to this earlier, that the signal seems to be that it's not just like a Band-Aid for stress, that there are enduring long-term benefits.
Yes, exactly. So people are saying that they're doing it every day and suddenly they don't need to use it as much as they did before, or they tapped on a certain experience and now when they're going to speak in public, they don't have the same heart palpitations and sweaty hands. They feel like they have more control. So I just hear again and again people say, like, it takes the edge off. Like, it takes the edge off enough for me to like be able to live my life. There's that's very common. And then we get stories of people going, this fear is gone. Like, my body just does not react to it anymore.
It's so cool. It's something that like I want to try out on my cat. You know, is there any evidence it works in felines, who I think, by the way, this whole time has been sitting under the table?
Yes.
There she is. Hi, Delilah.
Hi,
But
Delilah.
yeah, you know, cats are hypervigilant animals. So I wonder if just like a couple of gentle taps, like in the same acupoints.
I have
might work
no
for her.
research or literature on cats, unfortunately, but you could definitely try. And
She's a pretty well regulated cat, but you know,
yes.
who knows?
Takes after her owner.
Yeah, there you go. Well, where's the first place that people should go to learn more? I mean, obviously, you've just put out this incredible tome, Rewired, which
Yes.
it appears you've written with your siblings.
My two older brothers. And
Wow.
listen, if you can work in a family, no one triggers you more than your own family. So the fact that we're a functioning business and we like each other, I think also shows that the tapping works.
Amazing.
You can get it anywhere where books are sold. I'm really proud of this one. We've done this for 20 years. We have other books, but the research and our understanding of how it works has expanded so much that we were like, if we had to write one book that's like the cornerstone, the person who loves tapping and wants their sister to start it, this is the book that you buy them. Every chapter at the end is a tapping meditation that you can follow along. And if you don't like reading and following along, you can get access to the audio by getting the book as well. So I'm really proud of this book. It's just been a wonderful experience to create. And then we have the Tapping Solution app that you can download Android, iOS, and there's like a 14-day free trial. You could just experience it for free. We have a whole section we have a foundation and we have a whole section. So if you are a first responder, there's a whole section for like first responders, or if you're in a crisis, we have a whole section that's unlocked all the time that's always free. The one that we have ones for police officers done by police officers who've been using it in the field. So you can hear either a female police officer, and this is a real police officer, or a male police officer do the tapping, and that's always unlocked and free for everybody.
So cool. The more tools that people have at their disposal, the merrier. And I, you know, it's again not something that I knew anything about prior to having this conversation with you, but I've been hearing about it. Like I've been hearing through the grapevine, like whispers about tapping, and from a lot of people who've, claimed N of one anecdotally, yada, yada, all the caveats, but that it's like been really helpful to them.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for more people to find out about it.
Thank you so much.
Well, one last question for you, but before we get to that, where can people connect with you on social media? Is your book out at all major booksellers? Like, where can people pick it up?
Yes, it's by the time this airs, it'll be out on all major booksellers, and you can follow our Instagram. It's at The Tapping Solution. We do a lot of great. Anytime there's new research, we put it there. We explain the science there, and then we also you'll see my face or my brother's face doing quick tapping meditations. Which the interesting thing about that is we were like, we should show tapping, and Instagram gives you 90 seconds. So we were like, let's just do it. But people aren't really going to get a great result because it's 90 seconds. And then the comments were like, oh my goodness, I needed that. Oh, my stress went down. And so we just started doing more and then incorporated in the app these quick taps. So if you only have 2 minutes, you can just do like a quick boost of tapping, just one round.
Is 2 minutes, would you say, like the minimal effective dose?
No, I don't know what the minimal effective dose is. I would say one round, that you could just do one round before like getting on stage. I have these, I mentioned the kids card decks where they pick a card. It's in the back and they're reading the phrases, and it's just one round, just like slowly tapping and repeating, and just one round can help you feel centered. And if it doesn't, then you just keep tapping. But that surprised me. We never did something so short. And then we realized, people do need something that they could do in the car line, or you just need like a quick moment, and it helps. And the more comfortable you are, the more you can do it on your own.
That's so great. Yeah. I mean, stress is pervasive today. Whether it's, even from the comfort of our own couches. I mean, just like the rage bait nature of social media. Yeah. Like it's just, it's almost to a point where stress is inescapable. Like you hide from it, it'll find you.
I know. I think about it all the time because I was very close to my granny, who I was born in Argentina, and she was Argentine, but she lived in Argentina, but she was from England. And so when World War II broke out, she went to fight. She went to England. She was in the Royal Air Force. The love of her life died. She came back, both her parents had died. And I look at her life and I think there's nothing I should be stressed about. And I think I look at this life and I go, there's so much that we can be grateful for. But I remember one time I was in Argentina and I was looking through some of her old stuff that my aunt kept, and I found a newspaper which declared the war. It was like war with Hitler, front page. That is all she got. That is why she enlisted, but that's all she got. So all of those other days, yeah, there's a war, but you're in your house, you're present, you're not being constantly stimulated. I think we have to be so grateful for the life we have now, and I am. And I think there's a reality that our ancestors didn't have emails all the time. They didn't have text messages. They didn't have Twitter. They didn't have Instagram. They didn't have an algorithm that was designed to keep you stuck and needing more. And part of that is the nervous system. Am I safe? What's going to happen? Or can I get a thrill? So we actually do need to do more stress relief than our ancestors needed to do because of how much we're being stimulated by our world around us constantly.
It's so true. Yeah, we're cooked. I mean, it's just we've got these devices on us, and you try to put your device away or go offline, and it's everything is increasingly being wired to your devices. So I mean, even that's a futile effort. I mean, I had a Wi-Fi outage a couple of weeks ago, and I realized that I couldn't even open my garage because now I need my smartphone to open my garage door to get my car out. So it's it's
we're maneuvering. We're in the frontier of something, and we got to figure it out for our kids too. We have to figure out how we're going to manage this, and we need all the tools.
So true. Well, thanks for coming out. Thanks for sharing your work with us. Super exciting stuff. I hope people find utility in it. The last question that gets asked everybody on the show: what does living a genius life mean to you?
To me, living a genius life means having faith in something greater than myself and allowing myself to be led by my heart. I know that sounds very woo-woo, but really it's anything that happens to me, I feel there's a greater plan. And when I trust in that greater plan, I find the hidden blessing in everything.
Beautifully put. Amen. Wow. I love that. Well, thanks for coming out again.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for listening. Share this episode with friends and loved ones. Check out Rewired. And I'm going to try tapping.
Yeah. And shout out to my mom and dad who love your show. by the way.
What are their names?
Martin and Maria.
Hey, Martin. Hey, Maria. Thanks for listening. And thanks to all you guys for continuing to spread the word about the Genius Life. I'll catch you on the next episode. Peace. Hey, if you liked that video, you need to check out this one here, and I'll see you there.